The strategic objective of the 1942 German summer offensive was to capture the oil fields of Maikop, Grozny and Baku for two main purposes: to enable the German army to resupply their low fuel stock, and also to deny their use of the Soviet Union, thereby bringing the complete collapse of the Soviet war effort. It is a little known fact that the German Special Forces, officially known as the Brandenburg Regiment, played a vital role in the initial successes of the operation. The unit was formed by and operated as an extension of the German military intelligence, the Abwehr. Members of this unit took part in seizing operationally important targets by way of sabotage and infiltration. Being foreign German nationals who were all volunteers, had lived abroad and were proficient in foreign languages, as well as being familiar with the way of life in the area of operations where they were deployed. This photo clearly describes the nature of their missions. Here you can see German Special Forces operators in a camp in Bulgaria examining the Greek uniforms they would soon be wearing to sneak past the enemy. German operators would use the uniforms of captured soldiers and put them on over their own uniforms. A diagram on the notice board appears to show various parts of the enemy uniforms. The first assignment during the summer offensive in 1942 was led by Captain Siegfried Grabert. Grabert had already distinguished himself in the earlier campaigns. In April of 1941, during the advance in northern Greece, it was his leadership abilities that prevented the destruction of the 400-meter-long road bridge over the Vardar river at the last minute. He personally captured those Englishmen who had the mission of blowing the bridge sky high. With this, the only available bridge over the Vardar river fell into German hands. This move enabled German forces to immediately pursue the fleeing enemy without any loss of time. Grabert was later honored with the Knight's Cross for this mission. He was chosen for a similar operation in the beginning of the German summer campaign in 1942. In order to secure the advance following the fall of Rostov, the Germans needed to capture a 6,000-meter-long causeway over the Don River near Bataisk. This causeway consisted of 5 separated bridges with swampland on both sides. In order to capture this vital crossing intact, Captain Grabert and his company of Brandenburgers attacked on the 25th of July 1942. They made it as far as the second bridge without major resistance, but then the Soviet defenders began firing fiercely. Despite this, Grabert and his men pressed on and captured the third bridge when Grabert himself was wounded. He had an open wound in the stomach and was pressing it with both hands. The company medic tried to reassure him by dressing it. Grabert looked at him and said, "It's a waste of time. I have studied medicine and I know that I'm going to die." The Brandenburg officer was soon dead. His men were almost all wounded. But the Brandenburgers held their ground until the Panzer forces arrived, and with their support the causeway was completely cleared. Grabert would posthumously receive the oak leaves for this costly yet vital success that his men achieved. Here you can see the graves of Siegfried Grabert and another Brandenburg officer, Oskar Hüller, at the bridge near Bataisk. Their ages and years of birth are not given, but the Feldpostnummer, a type of postcode of the German armed forces, shows the location for both men's death. It is also important to note that the losses of Grabert's company were very high. It lost 87 men in 26 hours, including 33 killed and missing. The next target of the German special forces was the oil region of Maikop in August of 1942. Maikop, the third largest petrol center in the region, and the Red Army, unable to remove machinery and equipment quickly enough from the areas being occupied by the German forces, began a scorched earth campaign, destroying everything. To counter this, the German army sent in a Brandenburg unit under the command of Lieutenant Baron Adrian von Völkersam. Völkersam was born into an aristocratic Baltic German family and was fluent in Russian. Equipped with Soviet trucks and dressed as members of the NKVD, the Soviet secret police, the Brandenburgers approached the oil fields at Maikop. When Völkersam arrived at the Soviet headquarters in Maikop and convinced the Soviet commander to give him a tour of the base. Using the knowledge gained on this tour, the Brandenburgers were able to destroy the city's communications center and convince the Soviet forces that they have to withdraw. A few dozen kilometers away, another Brandenburger unit, also dressed in Soviet uniforms and commanded by Lieutenant Ernest Prochaska, and also traveling in captured Soviet trucks, advanced towards the strategically important bridge near Maikop. When they arrived to the bridge, they started to shout, "Tanks! Tanks!" The German soldiers also gesticulated and looked very terrified. This theater show convinced the Soviet defenders that they were Soviet troops in full retreat. The Soviet troops defending the bridge abandoned their positions and fled, allowing the German unit to disarm the demolition charges. Both officers were decorated with the Knight's Cross after their successful missions. A day later, on the 9th of August, the 13th Panzer Division marched in and captured the city, the oil fields, approximately 1,000 Soviet prisoners, without a single shot being fired. Later, the Axis forces came within 100 kilometers of Grozny, but they were never able to capture it or Baku.